It was 1953, and an event was about to happen in Iran that would not only change its future but also reshape international relations for decades. A long history of foreign influence and internal conflict made this moment inevitable, with oil at the center of it all. Iran's vast oil reserves had been controlled by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company for many years, bringing large profits to Britain while Iran received only a small share. This economic imbalance led to deep resentment among Iranian political leaders and citizens, eventually sparking a nationalist movement focused on regaining control over the nation's wealth. Leading this movement was Mohammad Mossadegh, a well-known politician who strongly opposed foreign control and stood for democracy and national independence. In 1951, Mossadegh became prime minister through direct elections by the Iranian parliament and immediately gained the support of a wide audience, since his political program made a demand for the nationalization of the oil industry. The national pride with which the parliament's decision was treated immediately elicited a strong backlash from quite dependent Britain. It turned around and imposed on their former colony a global ban on exports of Iranian oil, crippling the nation's economy. Senior British officials considered military action, including seizure of the giant Abadan refinery, at that time the largest in the world. Instead, they tightened the noose economically with sanctions and sought secret ways of bringing down Mossadegh's government. Initial requests from Britain for U.S. help were turned down. The administration of President Harry Truman did not favor a coup, sticking to diplomatic efforts in the absence of other drastic measures. Truman's approach reflected the immediate post-war desire to prevent colonial-style interventions. However, this changed in 1953 when President Dwight D. Eisenhower took office. His administration viewed the Cold War with increased urgency, and many nationalist movements were seen as possibly influenced by communism. At this point, British intelligence took the opportunity to portray Mossadegh as a Soviet ally, which played perfectly into U.S. fears of communism spreading. The British now pressed harder and harder for American involvement as their efforts at securing a peaceful resolution failed. Now, the head of the CIA was Allen Dulles, and a plan entitled Operation Ajax was designed to engineer Mossadegh's overthrow and consolidate power in the Shah's hands. The British intelligence agency M16, which worked in close cooperation with the Americans, had Operation Boot. This plan was assigned to Kermit Roosevelt Jr., the grandson of former U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt. The goal was clear: weaken Mossadegh's government, stir up public discontent, and strengthen the Shah's rule. Operation Ajax began with an organized propaganda campaign. CIA-funded newspaper articles and public broadcasts painted Mossadegh as a dictator and stirred fears of a communist takeover. Leaflets, rumors spread in Tehran, and other forms of propaganda turned the public against the prime minister. Next came paid demonstrations and strategic bribery of political and military figures. The idea was to create enough chaos to weaken Mossadegh's support and justify intervention. On August 15, 1953, this plan was put into operation, with the Imperial Guard chief, Colonel Nematollah Nasseri, being sent to Mossadegh's residence to arrest him and to deliver a royal firman dismissing him. But the plot was discovered and Nasseri was arrested. Mossadegh's loyal forces acted quickly to stop the coup, and thinking the danger had passed, the Shah fled Iran, first to Baghdad and then to Rome, making it seem like the coup had failed. Despite this setback, Kermit Roosevelt did not give up. He regrouped and worked intensively for several days. The streets of Tehran turned into a battleground of influence. Religious leaders like Ayatollah Mohammad Behbahani, unhappy with Mossadegh's secular policies, rallied their followers. The CIA paid various groups to organize demonstrations, including discontented citizens, paid individuals, and even criminals, to create the appearance of a popular uprising. By August 19th, large, well-organized demonstrations filled the streets. Pro-Shah mobs with crude arms fought against Mossadegh's supporters and the Communist Tudeh Party. Hesitant military units joined the anti-Mossadegh forces and took control of important areas in the city. The violence peaked when Mossadegh's house was attacked with tanks firing at it, forcing him to flee and later surrender. An estimated 200 to 300 people died in this struggle on that day, showing the scale and impact of the operation. As a result of the coup, General Fazlollah Zahedi, a pro-Shah figure chosen by the CIA, became prime minister. The Shah returned to Iran confident in his restored position with support from both the US and Britain. Mossadegh was arrested, tried for treason, and sentenced to 3 years in solitary confinement, followed by house arrest for the rest of his life. Other key figures in his administration were jailed or executed, and with their downfall, the brief period of democratic progress was destroyed. The immediate benefits for the Western powers were obvious. the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company regained its influence in Iran through a new international consortium that included American companies. This deal allowed the West to control Iranian oil while giving the Shah's government a share of the profits for economic stability. But in the long run, the consequences were serious. The coup strengthened the Shah's regime, enabling him to rule more autocratically. His government, supported by the newly formed Savak secret police, suppressed political dissent, arrested opposition members, and imposed strict control over freedoms. These actions reignited anger and set the stage for future revolution. The 1953 coup came to symbolize foreign interference and betrayal, framing the US and Britain as imperial powers willing to undermine democracy for their own interests. This perception was passed down through generations and fueled anti-Western sentiment that played a significant role during the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The Shah's overthrow that year led to the creation of an Islamic Republic under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini, fiercely opposed to Western influence. For decades, the US government denied its role in the coup. It wasn't until 2013 that the CIA declassified documents confirming its involvement, acknowledging that the coup was an act of US foreign policy planned and approved at the highest levels. President Barack Obama referred to the coup in 2009, highlighting its impact on US-Iran relations and using it as an example of a Cold War-era intervention that created lasting mistrust. The aftermath of 1953 extends beyond Iran's borders into a host of other theaters. In many ways, this set a precedent for other Cold War coups by the US in places like Guatemala, Indonesia, and Chile. It marked the start of an era where covert operations became a regular tool of US foreign policy, appearing worldwide to serve strategic and economic goals. However, Iran remembers the coup as a lost chance for self-determination, an instance of a proud nation fighting for true sovereignty. Events in 1953 continue to shape Iranian politics and its views on foreign relations, instilling a deep wariness of Western motives to this day. The coup remains a stark reminder of how power struggles driven by economic and political interests can shift the fate of nations and echo across generations. If you found that breakdown of the 1953 Iranian coup added to your knowledge, please let me know in the comments section below with any questions or thoughts you may have. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content on pivotal moments in history broken down.